walk with
But
us.
see our friend, God.
Yes,
Pull our
Lord.
hand,
Hold
Lord.
our hand, Lord.
Pull
Walk
our
with us,
hand,
Lord.
Lord. Thank you, God.
Walk with us.
Thank you, God.
Thank you, Lord.
Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Apostle Creed, I believe in God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and in Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord, who was conceived by the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, dead, buried, third day he rose from the dead. He ascended into heaven and sitteth on the right hand of God, the Father Almighty. From thence is to come to judge the quick and the dead. I believe in the Holy Spirit, the Church universal, communion of saints, forgiveness of sins, resurrection of the body, and life everlasting. Amen.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Hope you had a blessed week. Start with praise the Lord. We thank you just for giving us another opportunity to praise your name, Lord. Give you all the glory, Lord. All the praise, Lord. Just lead us in the right direction, Lord. And Lord, just ask you to just protect us, Lord, as we go through our journey, Lord. Lord, protect the ones that are on the way, Lord. Protect the sick and shut in. Give them the strength just to carry on the way, Lord. Lord, we all just put everything in your hands. Protect us, Lord. Continue to guide us, Lord. Lord, my words this morning, Lord, just resonate with the lives. We just get your need, Lord. Get your understanding. Lord, we bless your name. Amen.
Amen.
Again, good morning. Today, May the 3rd, 2026, the title of our lesson is The Higher Patriotism. The Higher Patriotism. Lesson scripture, Jonah 1 and 4. Focus scripture, Jonah, first chapter, 1 to 3rd verse. Third chapter, 1 to the 5th verse, and fourth chapter, 6 to 11th verse. And a key verse, the Lord said, you are concerned about the bush for which you did not labor and which you did not grow. It came into being in a night and perished in a night. And should I not be concerned about Nineveh? Jonah, 4th chapter, 10th through 11th verse. Moving right on into the introduction on page 54. Jesus commanded us to love our enemies and pray for those who persecute. Do you ever struggle to follow his commandment
especially when the person has deeply hurt you and might do so again? So that's the first question. That's the first question. Stop right there. I think that's a big struggle. Let me say that again. Do you ever struggle to follow his commandments, especially when the person has deeply hurt you and might do so again? So when a person has hurt you, you got to feel some kind of way. I mean, I feel some kind of way. So I'm about to dig deep. I'm about to dig deep on that one.
If it happens to the best of us, then we'll do it.
Yeah, it can. It can.
It has happened, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and moving right on down. Is there someone you need to ask God to soften your heart towards, so you can pray like Jesus did? So, and I'm not gonna get personal with calling on names, but yeah, I know I got some heart. you know, so, you know, and so and that situation weighs on you, because that situation was weighing on me. So I don't think I was making, I wasn't living, I think, the way I should, because that was my focus. It wasn't my main focus, but it was in me. So, so when that happens, I think that person is controlling, even though you might not even realize that, because your thoughts are there. So, moving right on into.
Most of the time, when you don't forgive that person is really controlling you.
Yeah.
So.
That is true. You got that, and that is so true.
Because all that action, is causing more harm on you and more stress on you. You thinking that, okay, what have you done to this person now? What can you do to make this person right? Like you said, you struggle with trying to say, okay, I'm going to forgive this person, but we know that God is a forgiving person. So you constantly pray about the situation and ask God to remove those, for instance, say you got a stony heart, just remove whatever's there and help you to do what is right and is pleasing. And regardless of however that person treats you, you show love and respect towards that person. And then that way, they wouldn't be controlling how you live or how you feel.
So I'm going to, even though, so if that person hasn't done something, if that person has done something to your family, or maybe you got a son, a daughter who's doing bad things out there, who's messed up, and so that is affecting you, so it's not that they did something to you. So that may be controlled, because you worried about, well, how am I my son, why is he messing up? What am I going to do to straighten him out? So that situation is not directly on you, but it's affecting you in a way, So you have to look at that person, or look at that situation, and I guess and cover them instead of just critiquing them and saying, you doing this, you doing that. Help them get out of that situation. Help them, so that, because it's affecting you also. It's affecting your family. So we got to look at that also. So going on to telling the Bible story on page 55. Jonah tries to run from God. Jonah tries to run from God. Jonah 1, first chapter, first through the third verse. And now, when I thought of Jonah, somebody, a believer knows that he can't run from God, because God is there all the time. He's there. He's there all the time. So Jonah was an Israelite prophet who chose to disobey God rather than go and preach in Nineveh, the capital of Assyria, which was a fierce enemy of Israel. And I'm moving around, I said one reason for Jonah's reluctance was that the Ninevites were violent enemies of Israel, and he did not want God to forgive them if they repented. So here is Jonah trying to determine or to make a decision for God. So how can if God gave him a commandment he didn't want to do it, because in his own mind, I think he knew what God was going to do, because God was sending him on a mission to preach to them, and he didn't want God to forgive them. He didn't want them to forgive him, so he took it upon himself. I don't want to do what you say. So
I think we've all been here, in that situation, with our enemies, before we know better, before we knew better. We would warn harm to come to those. We would want harm to come to our enemies before we knew better than to, before we knew that God would take care of the situation. But I know I've been there like, oh, I wish something happened to him, and I wish something happened to her, da. That's how we used to feel before we were in Christ. But, if you know better, do better. Even though Jonah knew God, he still was wishing harm on the Ninevites, because he wanted them to be punished. Not after, he didn't want God to forgive them. And I think we all been there before. I know I've been there. When I was like a babe in Christ, I would wish harm on others.
So moving right on down to national pride and personal pride seem to override Jonah's desire to obey God in this instance. So instead of heading east to Nineveh, Jonah fled west towards Tarshish, as far away as possible from God's command for him. So, how can you run? He didn't know the power of God, moving right, it says, Jonah might have, the middle, the blocking it, Jonah might have found reassurance in Psalms 139, 7 and 10, which concludes that God is everywhere. No matter where you go, he is there. So, you can run and hide, but, who are you hiding from? Yourself, right? That's what you do. You hide from yourself. Jonah preaches and Nineveh repents. After spending 3 days and in the fish's stomach, Jonah decided to obey God. So he had to spend 3 days, 3 nights. And sometimes we have to go through things for us to realize that we walking in the wrong way, walking the wrong way. So he obeyed when God instructed him a second time, and that sometimes it takes more than one time for people to get it. Sometimes, you have to go through a couple of trials and tribulations. Why am I keep on doing this? Something's going wrong. I need to change my ways. So he obeyed when God instructed him a second time to go to Nineveh and deliver the message he had for them. The message which Jonah delivered was brief but powerful. Brief but powerful. He didn't need a long message. So after he had delivered the message, the Ninevites believed, and the entire city starting with the king repenting. So that was one thing that Jonah didn't want to happen, right? Because he knew that when they repented, God was going to forgive them. But in his own world, he wanted them to be punished because what do you know about Nineveh? It was a bad city. They did everything with anybody in Nineveh. So he said, this bad city, they need to be punished. They need to be punished. So moving right along, Jonah's anger. Instead of joy, Jonah reacted with intense anger. He complained to the Lord for doing exactly what he had predicted he would do. So you knew that? You knew it. You knew it. So move right, say, he was glad when God provided a bush for shade, but became very angry when a worm caused the bush to wither. So, what was Jonah's issue? What was Jonah's issue there? You know what his issue was? Jonah, it was all about him. So when God provided a bush for shade for him, he was good. But when that worm came and ate that bush, and made that bush wither, then he was upset. You know. So the question that was prompted: how can our happiness get in the way of how God distributes grace? So he was happy. He was happy when he got shade, but then again when that worm came and made the bush wither, then he said, "Oh, I don't like that." So, but that was God's decision. That was God's decision. So, we have to look at, sometimes it goes back to that self thing. If it's all about me, then I'm not seeing the big picture. I'm not seeing the big picture. I'm on page 56, on top of page 56. So God gently used Jonah's anger over the bush to help him see how insignificant the loss of the bush was compared to the potential loss of more than 120,000 Ninevites and their animals, which would have occurred without God's compassion and mercy. A key message for Jonah was the fact that God's love extended beyond the nation of Israel. So we got to look at him. So that's what we're saying. He was all right when it was all about him, but he didn't want, he didn't want God to bless that big nation. He didn't see the big picture. Didn't see it at all. Did not see it at all.
And so that shows that just like, let's just use the church. When one goes astray, we should all think about that one person who's missing, or the people who are missing. Sick, we know, but I mean, if you know somebody, you should go out your way to at least call them and say, hey, we hadn't seen you lately. That's me. And that person will know that, oh, somebody's thinking about me. And you can bring them back to the fold. And that's what I think, like Jesus did. Jesus he left the other people and went for the one, not Jesus. Well, yeah, he would do that. But also, just like, what's the little one? Was it, who left the sheep and went to find the other one, the lamb? I can't remember the story, but he left them. One was missing, and he went to find that one. He didn't go on, he went to find that one. So that goes to show that we are important to Jesus and God, but we also should feel that the person, whoever's not among us, especially if we know them, we should be there to comfort them, encourage them, or whatever, to bring them back to the fold. And that's how I see how the love spreads. Because as I said, Israel was the chosen that he brought forth. But it wasn't just about them, it was about everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody, not just Jonah's soul. Other people's soul need to be saved too. And that's our mission. We need to go on and bring them toward the Lord. Show people toward the Lord, regardless of what they're going through. We just encourage them to see the bigger picture, like this thing says. Not just, this should go this way. But things happen in life, so it brings on changes, but still the focus is still to point them to our Father. That's just a point I want to make.
Yeah. And to bring it back home, if life is good for me, then do I look down on the people who are not blessed, or I'm not concerned with them? Because that happens, that arrogant attitude that I'm on top of the world, I don't care about y'all little people, so I don't care if y'all I've been blessed, so if God's not blessing me, but that's what happens, and I think the community, the world needs to look at that now, about who's being blessed. I want to take that out, just bring it back home. We help. I think we give this community awareness. We give things out, food and stuff out. Because we try to give to the ones who are in need. And if our nose is always in the air, and the God has done this great thing for me, and I don't care about that, about anybody else, then I think we got to look at that situation. Look at yourself, because it becomes an individual thing, and then we get within the group itself, and that's what help. And that's one thing that church is definitely should be doing, helping the community, the people who are in need. If we come together, we're blessed. Okay, let's spread that blessing out to other people. So, and I think we heard the old term says if the church disappears, will the community miss us? Will the community miss the church? And that's the difference of whether a church is really making a difference or is contributing to that community. So we got to look at that. And I think, and I had a question: is God's performance more important than God's presence to you? So yeah, if God is in my life, what is it? But is it important to see how He's blessing other people? That's where I look at the question. And it's my blessing. Can I spread my blessings to other people? Because if I keep it all locked in just to me, then I don't think that spreading of that gospel is not happening. If I keep all of the blessings that I'm getting to myself,
And also, I was watching a movie, and this particular guy, because they had so much, he didn't even realize, not just looking down on people, but he went on with his life because he know it, even though he was selfish, and he didn't consider himself selfish, he had. So he just didn't even see the people, he didn't recognize anything around him other than what was for him, that the other people, if somebody was in need or somebody was hurt, somebody's health was bad, he didn't recognize that until something happened to him. And so most cases, God has to bring us to a point where we can surrender in order to hear Him, see Him, and do for Him. And sometimes that gets in the way, life, you just do life as you know it. You don't see the other things going on because you just making sure you keep your stuff going. And sometimes we get in that position, not necessarily always looking down on people, just you don't see them. And once God come into your life, you started noticing everything around you. That's how I feel. Sometimes things happen to people. It takes something, God has to hit you, prick your heart, and show you things, and then show you the way.
Right, I agree. And I think people are always watching. They see how you act, the way you talk to people, and if they see even if they see your bad ways. So what does it matter that people see you in that way? Or, and should your actions show that you changed, people, because it's I should live my life and not worry about what other people think or say, but that's, reality is, people do look at you, and if I'm walking around all arrogant, and I think I've heard that comment that say, but somebody told me, you walk around like you kind of arrogant. I said, me? They told me, I said, but I'm just being me. I try to be confident in the things that I do, but it made me kind of look at my persona and how I carry myself. I said, do I need to step back a little bit and don't, and I guess be more friendly, 'cause I think I am some kind of standoff sometimes, so I said, do I need to change my ways a little bit, to change that persona that I'm giving out that bad aura, but that's not how I am. So but your actions do really, I guess they show how, they kind of define who you are sometimes. And maybe it's not true, maybe people are looking at you the wrong way. So.
It's kind of funny you said that because, when I came over to Mini Hughes, there was this one person was, saying that she thought I was mean because, I was over at St. John when she first met me, and I was in the front office at St. John. The reason I was there was because after 16 years at West Essex High, when we got the new principal, he cleaned house. So they had to find some place for me to go. So when I went to St. John, I was crushed. I was just torn apart. So I was in the front office, not knowing that I was putting on this persona, like you said, because I was going through, I went through that whole year over at St. John. If someone would come in the front office and they would say, oh, you're new and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I would just break down and cry. And my principal had to tell me many times, go in the bathroom, get yourself together. Because I was going through, that thing really tore me up. So I was putting on this persona to people that I was not nice, I was not friendly. But when I went over to Mini Hughes and the data clerk saw me and got to know me and stuff, she was like, oh, I thought you were a mean person, because when I first met you and da-da-da, and I used to come over there, you never used to smile, and but because I was going through, and I didn't know that I was putting on whatever that people looked at me as, but it wasn't that I was mean, it was that I was just going through my moment at the time, and I went through a whole year, I did, I went through a whole year, I just thought that was the worst thing somebody could have done to me. After 16 years of service over there, and, but they had to find something, and I'm just as happy as I want to be right now.
Maybe that was God's way of, moving you or showing somebody else something, All right, moving on to the St. Coker. Says the prophet Jonah, who lived in the 8th century BC, struggled with a form of nativism, resisting God's call to help people he saw as outsiders. This same mindset has appeared throughout African American history. While nativism is often viewed as an anti-immigrant, African Americans have long been treated as outsiders in their own country. That is so true. From the beginning, brought over as slaves, and when we did get free, we were treated second-class citizens. And it goes on to say, even during the Reconstruction, the Great Migration into the 20th century, nativism attitudes have driven laws and practices that kept Black African Americans from full participation in American society. So that is going on right now. We can see it, in plain view. Even the Supreme Court's decision last week that they revoked the voting rights, with a part of the voting rights act that when state tried to, they redrew the lines, and so they're saying that if you cannot prove that it was racially biased, that the lines were drawn, they can do what they want to do. So, in my point of view, in my view, it is racially biased that they drew the lines that way. Because you're trying to say it's politically, the reason why you drew the lines and redrew the districts was because it was politically motivated, but, Republicans and Democrats, that's a black and white thing. Right now, even though it may not seem that way, that's the facade that they're giving out. But we are definitely being set backwards in our equal rights. It's going to even make us harder to make it harder for that minority to make a difference. The term that the minority majority party or position, that means that even though that black race represents it's a minority, they should be able to have a voice, and that's why some of the districts are drawn that way. Mr. Taylor?
We can see that, we feel that as the anti-immigration, we feel it now, and we saw it back then, before the Jim Crow era. So, I don't know what has changed from then to now, even though we thought we were moving in the right direction, here we go back. Why? Because we're not taking this thing serious. And even so, in your community, in your churches, we are not. We feel we are anti-immigration, immigrants, because we divide ourselves, we separate ourselves. So when we do that among ourselves, the others see that, so they know that's how they play on us, because we don't come together to do anything. So we're dividing ourselves among the whole community, among the states, among the nation. So how do we change that? Because from before the Jim Crow era, okay, how our grandparents, foreparents, how they fought for us to get where we are. Now we don't care about us. We only care about self. So when we don't come together and when we don't unite, that's when all chaos starts.
I believe we took our eyes off of God, because he was always with our great-grandparents and all the way through Martin Luther King, when we, through that era when we got the right to vote and all that. And that's what it is. We took our eyes off of God. He was the glue. He was the glue to keep us together. But when we took our eyes off of him, then everybody started doing things their way. Just like Jonah, started wanting things their way and seeing that this is the way to do it, this, and that. But that's what it is. He was our glue. And until we get our focus back on him first, it's going to still be that way no matter what we do in life. He was the glue.
Yeah. So, moves on to the 1790 Naturalization Act denied them citizenship, and although the 14th Amendment granted it in 1868, groups like the KKK continued nativist violence and rhetoric to marginalize African Americans. So I think today's KKK is ICE. They're doing it right in front of our face. So that's the difference. They made the KKK movement, law, making it law. So and so the parallel. So the ICE is still going on, still doing their thing. So they're still going through the courts. That's why the shutdown is still going on, because we want to reform ICE, and the majority party doesn't want that, and so they continue to kill the people. And then here we go with this war we got going on, and now they're saying that the ceasefire and we need to stop. But here we got administration say, well, no, we don't need the ceasefire. We had this pause. So in turn, they still kill people. So we're in a situation that it's supposed to, they stop this and fix it. But they're not. They're not. So, you know, it says, and moving on top of page 56, today's calls for justice are still often labeled unpatriotic, and DEI initiatives are being reframed as reverse discrimination. So they turn it around, say, you know, we're even now, so we can't use that, you know. So there was a big uproar this past week about Sacramento State wanting, you know, the governor, the lieutenant governor to come and speak. Why?
No, South Carolina State didn't.
No, they didn't. Well,
No, it wasn't South Carolina State, it was one person, not the president. It was the chairman that spoke to the president to invite the lady in December. So it was not South Carolina State.
yeah.
It was it was the chairman who is a Republican.
So I think it's concluded, you know, in our discussions, so well, the board must have looked at this, but they must have. So. I don't know.
There are decisions that the president have the right to do. It was recommended to the president by the gentleman. So then the president, upon this guy's recommendation, invited the lieutenant general. Now maybe you can say the president should have done some research, but that's what happened. That's why you got to be very careful who you bring in and put in your pulpit. The same thing. And so what it is that it was South Carolina, the students then found out because she came back boasting. She was boasting about cutting out DEI. I'm a Donald Trump fan forever and all this. So it's just like I share with them. I share with my friend, the Republican over at St. Peter's. I asked him, I said, well, do you think a group of Republicans would want a Muslim to come and speak to them? And so these children these students, but they could have done, let her come, and the parents and all the graduating class don't even show up. There was an option, you know, but they decided, but they stood up. They stood up. So I just wanted I don't want to say South Carolina State invited them. You know, it was this guy who was a Republican, and they put it there. And believe, and if you don't understand, Mark Sanford, for an example, when he sent Maurice Washington as a trustee to South Carolina State, Maurice Washington went in there and tore up everything until they got him out, and then they started selecting people and everything. So it's you know, it's crazy, but at least those young people, them young adults stood up.
And what I didn't understand with her being a mature woman and in position, why she would get upset that they didn't want her, knowing that she was against everything they stood for. You know, why would she even react and say what she said? I was really surprised. I was surprised about that she would say that openly, publicly to them, directly, you know?
You gotta understand the agenda, what their plans, you know, they wanna wipe out, you know.
Right.
So I'm in your face, this is what I'm doing. It doesn't matter, you know, there's no hiding anymore.
What they expect for people to bow down to them. And when you don't bow down to them, then they get upset. We do the same thing too in the church. We do it in our communities. We do it all over. You know, when people come, see, those young adults were demanding, no, we didn't vote, we didn't ask for her. You know, and so sometimes as adults, we get so caught up in our own way of thinking, we ignore other voices, and then it leads to things like this.
And the last paragraph of Snow, the quote says, recognizing these patterns helps us better understand not just Jonah's resistance to God's inclusion plan, but also how nativism continues to challenge God's vision for unity in both society and his kingdom. So we're gonna always be challenged. So it's up to us, like Till said, we will stand up and fight back. So the way we're gonna do that is gonna make a difference.
at the very top, it says leading to redlining, housing discrimination, and race riots. When they talk about redlining, let's explain that.
Getting, I think, to my understanding, it's getting to a point where that situation or that it's a point of no return. If you go across that red line, you know, that's something. You better take that one.
Well, to explain it, and I learned this from a Jewish person at one of Charleston, at city council meeting. And he explained it. Redlining is when certain communities are cut off. Even though you in that environment, just like you all were redlined for how long? Until they build those homes over there. Then y'all were able to get what? Sewage, water, and also what? Internet. See, on this side, to tell you the truth, you were redlined. And here's one example that they give you to show you about redlining. Where does the train track, which communities it run through? You see? It affects more black communities than any other. You don't see them running train tracks through upscale neighborhoods and everything. You go in North Charleston, where the old Amtrak used to be, it was totally a black community. I mean, when it came through Dorchester Road and all through them back there, black communities. You see, and he took the time, he said, I know some of my colleagues are upset with me, but I need to tell y'all the truth. And he said, and what he was disappointed for is that they held a meeting at Morris Brown AME Church, and more white people showed up at the meeting than black folks. It was a Friday night. And y'all know what we do on Friday night. Just got paid, I ain't got time for that stuff. You see, but we have to change our thinking and understanding. They put that in this lesson for this to come forth. Redlining is when they cut your neighborhood off. Your neighborhood is even there, but your neighborhood don't get all the benefits that other neighborhoods get. Exactly.
So we all talk about the laptop.
That's why you see, like for an example, the rural schools, the education, the level of education that they give, is less than when you go into an urban area. And then like in downtown Charleston, there were 5 high schools down on the peninsula. 5, Burke, Say, Brown, Rivers, Charleston High, and Buse Academy. There were 5 high schools there, but what they did, they started chopping it up and everything, and they made a setup that the education level that were being given. That's a come when our children go to. So when let's deal with us. When we finished high school and went to certain places, we find ourselves behind other people. Anybody was surprised about that?
Media classes before we take our virtual
Exactly. We had to take that, when I went to Trident Tech, I had to go all the way through remedial arithmetic, because to learn how to do fractions and to do because of the course that I was taking, electrical engineering. But I was able to end up with physics and all of that stuff, but because we prefer all of the other things than paying attention to what is really happening. And Jonah was discriminating, but also Jonah said, when you look at the lesson, Jonah said, well, I know you were going to do this anyway. But the thing is that he just didn't want to go.
the case study. It says, Christian nationalism combines political and cultural beliefs that present Christianity as the core of American identity, asserting that the U.S. is fundamentally a Christian nation that should be guided by Christian values. Y'all believe that? On the surface, that's the way it should look. But those Christian values are definitely being pushed to the bottom, I think. You know. So and I always use the fine line between politics and your values. You know, some people say, well, I'm just voting because I'm voting politically. But if you're voting politically, I think your values have something to do with the way you vote. You know, I definitely do. So, so that statement, you know, that asserting that the U.S. is fundamentally a Christian nation, it should be guided by Christian values, and I think that Christian population is the evangelicals. I think that's the term that they're putting out there, that we're this Christian base, but they got another agenda. They're following or behind the administration that's being unlawful and not Christian-like.
It has never been, this place has never been about Christian values. What they have done, the Europeans came in this country, established this country, and what they did was use the word Christian. And what they did when because they established a slavery system over here. They did all these things. And so, you know, did anybody get to read the Daily Bread for Friday? If you read the Daily Bread for Friday, you would see what it says when it talked about, it mentioned that we all are created in God's image. And so then if you, a white person, telling me, a black man, that I'm not worthy of such and such a thing, then you are actually saying to God, because it said that everything, God said everything that he made is good, and he created us in his own image. This is where I have a problem with us, is that we are already being torn down by those folks, and then we take each other down. Because, you know, some people may have gone through some challenges in life, and so then we look at them differently because, well, you know, I never been there, I never had to go through that. But then the stuff that people are holding inside of them is what's really tearing them up. And so since they haven't dealt with that personal stuff, they spew it out on everybody else, and that's what contaminates our communities. But this, you know, Christian nationalism, they know, white folks know what to do. They use the right word. You put the word Christian there and put anything other, what is Christian nationalism? That's not a religion. That's just a term that they use to confuse people.
And that's what, while nativism emphasizes native-born Americans, Christian nationalists aim to define the U.S. through a narrow, often conservative or evangelical vision of Christianity. That's exactly what you just said right there. You know, they see secularism, pluralism, and immigration as threats to Christian values. So, you know, that big emphasis that the administration got, that there was nobody else coming into this country that wasn't born here, you know. But that's what America is made of. You know, a lot of different people. When we came over here, and well, not we, when they came over and took over this country, this land, and started bringing in slaves and other immigrants started coming in. That's what the country's made of. That's what we made of. And to say from the beginning that mindset about we are the supreme people, and everyone else is a lower standard, you know, person. That's always been there. And just trying to, I guess, bring that back up to the forefront. That this is what we're doing. This is what this nation's all about. And the part about not teaching the real history about how the United States got where we are right now is a problem for them. They don't want that to be taught. They want to change the way things are.
You know, right now, I have worked the pool for so long, I don't know how many years, but now, all of a sudden, they give a little increase. They got us going to like 3 different classes. I'm like, what in the world are these people doing? Some of us have a job, but now they want us to go to this class, go to that class, but what are y'all trying to do to us? The majority of people that work the pools are, what kind of, it's most of us. Now they give a little increase or whatever. Now they got us going to 3, I guess they're saying like, oh, she ain't coming, cause I know, they ain't gonna go through all of that, go to this class and then come back and go to another class all day on Saturday. What are they trying to do? I'm just looking at this. Yeah, you know, 3 classes, one time we just have to go in person, to take the test, go through a whatever process, learning process, and take the test, and that's it. You can go online and go through your little classes. No, they got us going to like 3 different classes. For what? Why? It ain't scaring me, cause if I can take off my job, I got gauges, you know, so. It ain't scaring me, they ain't scaring me, cause I've got gauges, you know? But they come up with all sorts of stuff to hinder us from doing certain things.
That's the elimination process.
Yeah, and to see if you're gonna go to these classes or not.
Right, do this,
Right.
in order to do this.
It don't make no sense.
I think that the key word, as Mr. Strong said, was the process. If they make that process harder for you to get to that certain point, then they know, they figure, oh, we have a few that will fall out. And there won't be as much representation or as much insight at the polls, you know, or looking at the injustices that are going on. So the more eyes that we have on the situation, the better. But if we make the process harder, then
This is still nothing new though, because when it came to vote, think about the process that our ancestors had to go through. They gave them a jar of beans or something and said, can you tell us how many beans in the jar? You know what I mean? So, but what it is the difference in that generation and this generation is that it don't take much for us to just give up. We just give up. I ain't going through that. You know, it requires a sacrifice. You know, yeah, it's on a Saturday morning, guess what? I just can't go shopping this Saturday because I'm going to be in this line to make them angry. That's what our ancestors did. They said, well, you're going to have to count this and do that. They said, well, we're going to stand right here and we'll count it all until, you know, see, we have to find a way to say what is most important, not for me, but for the generation behind me. And when we get to that point, you know, we'll be a whole lot better because, you know, what's that part of that song? Said that I'm not going to let nobody turn me around. Well, see, they sung that and they meant that. But do we really mean it when we sing it?
And because we have the right to vote, if you work, they are to let you, within that time frame, they have to let you go vote. So my thing is, why not take that extra, instead of staying 12 hours on your job and you know you got, go and vote. It takes time to vote, so you try to fix it where you can go, or either leave a little earlier, but they still have to allow you to vote. So that's how I look at it. We have to strategize how we do things, not just say, oh, I'm working that day. No, they have to let you go vote if the time is the same as when you're supposed to be working.
And that's where
We have to remember that.
Yeah, and that's where the education comes into play. You don't know, you know, if that person, your employer is not going to.
They will tell you.
Right, so you have to know your rights. You have to know what you can and cannot do. So if they say, well, you can't let you off know your rights, and that's that education that we have to get out, we have to get out there.
Okay, I have one question. I like this, you saying now, back in the days, our older people had to go, because some of them couldn't read. They went to Charleston County, people took them down to Charleston County School, to the library, and taught them how to read so they can be able to vote. I worked with the poll 20 years, and I'm so proud of our old people who know how to read.
Yes, that's true. That education is still needs to happen. So we think that we know it all, because they're constantly changing the rules on us. They're constantly changing the rules, moving the goalposts, as I say. So you think that you're doing the right thing, you don't know that there's a change in there. Oh well, no. So we have to keep our eye on the prize and make sure we're up on all the new changes that's going on. So I'm in with it says on the page 57, says Jonah's anger didn't resolve anything. When we hold on to resentment, it robs us of joy, including the joy that comes from the Lord. So we definitely have to let go of things and look to the Lord, and it's not all about us when things happen. We got to look at the big picture, and it's all about God's kingdom. God's kingdom is he's putting us through some things right now. So, we have to definitely be aware. And on that, I'm going to close and let the children get up and do their thing. Thank you.
Good morning. How are you today? I'm fine. I hope you are too. I love you, you love me. We are a happy family. One big thing, hug and kisses all for you. Honestly, love me too.
Okay, so our lesson was about forgiving our enemies, and sometimes we have to forgive people that did bad things to us. And our key verse was, when God saw what the natives did and how they turned from their evil ways, he relented and did not bring them from the destruction he had treated.
Now all girls tell them what to do. Good on paper. What do you say? Forgive what? Say, tell them what you do. We forgive everyone.
We forgive everyone. We forgive every single person. If you don't know that, you forgive everybody.
Who forgive us?
God.
God. Okay, thank you all so much. Jonah. Of course, God speaks to us plain and simple. Sometimes he speaks to us in parables, so we gotta have an open, heart and an open mind to receive the word. So whatever direction he sends us, we must be willing to accept those directions and go. But God also provides that plan, whatever the plan is, for, we must be able to take on that plan and accept it for the mission, not for us, but for others. And of course, like the word says, our thoughts are not his thoughts, and his thoughts, God's thoughts are not ours. Our ways are not his ways, and his ways is not our ways. So we gotta follow his ways. God also shows compassion. He shows compassion for those of our enemies as well, and we must do the same thing. We know sometimes we get into situations that we can't control, but then again, we know who is the ultimate person who could be able to help us through that. So let us not be very well doing when we try to show God, walk in the way that God wants us to walk, when we have to deal with enemies, our enemies, and not just our people, but look at the world itself. We're going through. Also, we got to reflect on how God applies grace, how he applies grace in our everyday lives. Without grace and mercy, who knows, where would we be? And also the question is, are you willing to go where God sends you? Think about that this week.
Thanks, Sister Taylor, for giving us remarks from the adult class. Thank you, Sister Nelson, for conducting our primary class. Thank you, Brother Smith, for a very fruitful lesson and bringing it home to everyday life. Let us stand and do our dismissal together. May the Lord keep watch between me and thee while we are absent one from another. Amen.